Hey, we're so happy that you're joining us. I'm Dr. Mike, lead pastor here at the King Arm Baptist Church, and this is our first edition for this year of our Transformation series. What is that? It's interviewing people who've been through life and have transformative experiences that understand that God has been a central part of it. Today, this person that is here with us is no stranger not only to the BVI, but the Caribbean. With his music, his enchanting voice on the radio, all over the airways, he is not only legendary in his own right, but a genuine, heartfelt person and a good person for our humanity. I want to welcome to our studio and our space and our environment, Hashim ThaDream Lewis, my brother. So glad to have you here.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
It's an honor.
And you're giving me an introduction. I couldn't make up if I tried. So I'm blessed to be here. Thank you so much.
Man, I'm so grateful. At this time, we just want to just get right into it.
Let's do it.
We talked about what this transformation series is and what it means to have people who've gone through life-changing moments, events, and sometimes they're not fortunate or unfortunate, but the good thing is you're here with us right now.
Yeah.
So whatever had happened wasn't meant to be the end. So I want to talk to you about this. I want you to be able to feel free to share your story. I'm really inspired that you're here. I remember when we got on the phone and we spoke, you was like, yeah, just let me know.
Of course.
And now we're here. And we're so grateful. I want to ask you just before we get started, how does it feel to be on the other end of the interview?
It feels good. It feels familiar because I'm no stranger to being interviewed.
Yeah.
I've been interviewed on television, radio stations, being on the opposite end of the mic. So it's been a while. So I think I have to readjust as to being the interviewee once again. But yeah, man, I feel totally comfortable, man.
Well, there's no way to segue around this conversation. Basically, a year ago right now, you were fighting for your life.
Yeah.
And tell us, how did we get to that point?
In all honesty, to this day, I still try to wrap my head around what was the initial cause of it. About 2 years ago, I caught a case of pneumonia after a gig in Virgin Gorda. And, I attributed it to the weather. It was, wintertime. It was cold outside. I had been in the club energizing the people. I'd walked out into the cold wind with a wet, sweaty shirt. So I just attributed it to bad timing, but in that same year, I had a second spell of pneumonia under similar circumstances. But I started to think to myself, even with the little medical knowledge I have, I'm like, getting pneumonia twice in a year seems
a bit excessive.
A bit strange, a bit odd. But I went and got treated at the hospital. I recovered, and it seemed to have gone away for a while. The entire of 2023, went about doing regular life, doing what I do best. I made a pivotal change. At summer 2023, I decided to resign from teaching to focus solely on the entertainment aspect of my career. And so I dived full on into the music and the radio side of my life. And just as December turned last year, once again, I fell into extreme pain in my chest, and I found it hard to breathe. And so, I have a slew of godparents here that they check up on me on a regular basis anyway. But they insisted, you need to go to the hospital. So I did, and they warded me.
So you were admitted at that time?
I was admitted at that time. That must have been the 3rd or 4th of December last year.
Yeah.
And from there, it just proceeded to get worse. I was just
so
bedridden in the hospital.
2023, the 4th December 2023.
Yeah.
You walked in the hospital and it just got progressively.
Yeah, it just seemed to get progressively worse. I was like, I didn't know what was wrong with me. They were just running a bunch of tests, a bunch of X-rays. I think I did a bronchoscopy, and then they said that I needed further testing and I had to get airlifted to Puerto Rico. So a whole
At that point, let me just ask you, like at that point when you're in those kind of situations, what's going through your mind? Like what emotions do you remember feeling like?
I it all seems so numb on this side of things. But looking back, I just remember feeling, aside from the pain in my body, I was just I had been going on a tear, just diving into everything. My week was constantly just movement, go. From the moment I got up, I was on the radio in the morning. I still did a part-time teaching thing in the afternoon on the other side of the island. Tuesdays, I had a choir practice. Wednesday, a choir practice. Thursday, I was rehearsing for a play. Fridays, I have gigs in the clubs. So I was just going and not stopping.
Non-stop.
And
So this seemed like it stopped you.
I literally hit a brick wall, and I physically just felt tired. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I don't remember feeling scared. I just remember feeling tired, just so very tired, just not knowing what was going to happen next. And then when they told me Puerto Rico was where I had to go next, I just sat there and I nodded my head and I was just like, okay, if that's what needs to happen, then that's what needs to happen. And so much happened in the space of 24 hours in order to get it to happen. They had to bring a plane from Anguilla in order to take me over. And then I ended up in this, I wish I could remember the name. It was a Catholic hospital in Puerto Rico. They're very big on Catholicism over there. I'm a Catholic myself, so it was nothing strange or anything.
Yeah.
But and I spent another week there, where they ran tests and continued to feed me fluids through a tube. I was getting shot with needles like every 6 hours probably.
Wow.
Just them taking my vitals, testing my blood pressure, doing whatever.
And when you're going through this, like what's happening in the mental space?
Nothing. Again, I think I was just trying to recover from the fact that I just hit this wall, like really trying to process what is going on here. I generally was just curious as to finding out what was wrong with me, and it wasn't until maybe about 3 days that I was going to be released. One of the doctors eventually said, we're going to run a full bronchoscopy on you, run a camera down your nose into your lungs and take a proper examination on the inside because there's something that's going on with your lungs. They had determined that it was a lung infection of some kind, but they just didn't know what was the cause.
Yeah.
So, I did that test. They went and took it. They said it would take a few days. This was a few days before the Christmas, literally about this time last year exactly. And they said the results wouldn't be ready until after Christmas. So once I was healthy enough that I could leave and go. So, my mother was with me the entire time. I have no words for what my mother has done for me in my life in general, but in the past year, I don't think anyone has been in my corner more than she has. So we left Puerto Rico. I spent Christmas in Nevis with the family, and I think just a few days after Christmas, we got a call from the doctor in Puerto Rico, and they officially announced that I had a carcinoid tumor lodged in the lower part of my left lung. And so that's
when you hear those things, what was that, bro?
I heard it and I just processed it. I don't know. We like to say life is lifing all the time. And I was just like, at this point in my life, I was just always thinking, it's always something, in the back of my mind. I was like, when is life supposed to, when are you supposed to start enjoying life? As much as it is my job to make sure people have a good time or whatever, when the lights go off on the stage, I give the mic back and I go home and I sit down and I look up at the ceiling and I'm like, when is life supposed to start being enjoyable? Mm-hmm. And this just seemed like another curveball life was just throwing at me. And at the time, I just processed it and I was just like, okay, so what needs to be done? Yeah. Obviously, we need to get this out. So they explained, obviously, what the tumor was. Thankfully, it wasn't as potent as, really bad tumors. Carcinoids, the causes for them are still unknown. They can come from a myriad of things, be them secondhand smoke, standing in a building with too much mold over a period of time. Any one of those causes could have been why I contracted it. And probably, of course, having COVID and my immune system not being what it was before the pandemic, probably all attributed to contracting it. And so I just needed to find out what we needed to do, and the doctor laid out the options for me. And so we looked at our best options and where to go to be treated, and we chose Trinidad because of my deep connections down there on my mother's side. My mother had good medical friends that she knew, and we got in touch with an amazing doctor named Dr. Mark West, who took my whole case and made sure that everything was proper before he even decided to operate on me.
Like an earthly angel.
Yeah, literally, he was a godsend.
So in the midst of all this, right, as you're going through the process, how did your faith play into this? Because I think sometimes when people see you in the light, they may not understand people's spiritual walk and their faith.
Of course.
How I know you're still numb. It's right a couple of days before Christmas. Everyone's supposed to be getting great news and presents, and you just got a news that you have a carcinoid tumor that has 2 or 3 options of what you have to do. And yes, your mom is there, but there are moments that you're by yourself. Where does your faith come into all of this?
At that point, I was very just happy to be still on my feet. At that point in time, like the reality of the situation really had not. It was nowhere close to hitting me properly yet. All I knew is that I was thankful to still be here. I came back to BVI just as the year turned. I went out and just observed the New Year celebrations. Everybody greeted me warmly because at this point I had shared online what was going on with me, and so everybody was just very happy to see me and on my feet. But basically, I spent the next few weeks just keeping to myself and trying to rest up as much as possible, because I knew that I'd be traveling to Trinidad to prepare for this surgery. And unfortunately, during this time, I got tested even further because my grandmother passed away.
So in the midst of all of this.
Her name was Irma, ironically enough. She
I remember you posting a really heartfelt message about your grandmother.
Yeah, she was the mother my second mother, when I lived in Trinidad. I stayed with my grandparents. I stayed in their house. It was a very hollow feeling traveling down to Trinidad for the first time, and pulling up to her house and not seeing her there to greet me, the way she always does, because of course it's "How are you, grandson?" And she used to sing when she talked, Mike, and I would ask, "How are you, Granny?" And she would just say, "Wonderful, wonderful." And it warmed your heart every time, and not hearing that for the first time was definitely was crushing, but I was able to be there to send her off, and she lived an incredible life. She was 91, 90 technically, but she was a woman who counted her years living as in advance. She said she would have finished her 91st year.
Yes.
And once we said our farewells, and then I went into prep mode, a lot of pre-tests, weeks and weeks. And, during that time, Carnival was there. As much as my parents didn't want me to participate in anything, the doctor recommended, just go wear a mask. And, this is definitely a lot of mental strain on you. I'm sure being surrounded by something familiar that you love will ease that tension.
And music and friends.
Of course. And, Trinidad is like a second home to me, but it is literally where I discovered myself.
Yeah.
So being there was definitely therapy to just be in the carnival. And then of course in the midst of that, the Pumpa video went hyper viral.
Yeah. Me being Dr. Mike and a pastor, I interact with a lot of people, and some of them when I say the camera people are laughing.
Oh man. I like to say that.
I won't say that I didn't watch the video. I won't say that I watched it. I was very much. Here's what I thought. I'll be very. Can I be?
By all means.
Can you listen and not judge?
Yeah, of course.
I was like, he is not supposed to be on these people's stage. He's supposed to be prepping.
Yeah.
What is he doing up there?
Oh Lord, nah, you were not the only one.
I was like, what's the timestamp on this? When is this?
You were not the only one. You were not the only one that I got that message from. I
was like, what?
I got a message. I said, I need to come for you. That's what needs to go on.
I was like, forgiveness does not end with a name.
Yeah,
I can't forgive him.
I said, better to ask forgiveness than permission.
But then as the days got closer to now, the actual surgery and the procedure, when did it hit you? What was happening?
It hit me after the surgery, to be honest with you. I remember making the video saying that what was going to happen, and everybody sent their well wishes. And the day of the surgery.
What was the surgery? What did they have to do?
They had to. Eventually, what was decided was that my entire lung could not be saved because of where exactly the tumor was placed. It was placed right directly in one of the air ducts in my lower lobe. So they couldn't save the entire lung. So the best course of action was to remove the lower lobe, which would have been a very intricate process, and some doctors would have said they would have just removed the entire lung and be done with it, which is literally what one of the doctors told my mom. Thankfully, he was not the head surgeon in charge of my care. So they had to go in through my back, and there's a deep scar on my back that runs like this, like a hook. I think it stops right about here somewhere. And they had to go in. I think they also had to remove a part of my rib as well, just to get there and remove the tumor. It took about 11 hours. I was on the operating table. 11
hours.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I know you're anesthetic, but but 11 hours.
When I woke up, I was I felt that brick wall for real. Like, it felt worse than when I got hospitalized in December, and there were all sorts of tubes coming out of me, and I was in a hospital just bedridden, and still then it really hadn't hit me. It was just like, I said, so what happened? The first, when I was finally able to talk through the anesthesia, I said, did we do good? And the doc was just like, yeah, you did great, and now you just need to rest. And I was in intensive care, they were going
How long were you in intensive care?
I was probably there about 4 days in fully intensive care. I think, when was I think the surgery was on Easter Thursday, and I think my grandmother's birthday was Good Friday. So by the time I had woken up, it would have been my grandmother's birthday. Yeah. So I like to think she was watching over me throughout that surgery. And I don't know, my brain was just like, because I had asked all the questions to the doctor. I was like, am I still going to be able to do what I do? And he said, once you're fully recovered, which, it's not going to, even now, I'm still in a sense of recovery.
Yeah.
You're not gonna feel like your regular self again until maybe about a year after out of this.
Wow.
You know, and my mind just told me, hey, okay, the hard part is over. Let's try to get up. And day one, I said, I need to get out of bed. I just felt so uncomfortable. I need to stand.
Yeah.
I need to stand. And when the doctor came to check in on me, and he was like, I was sitting in a couch right next to my hospital bed. I was like, you're out of bed. And I said, yes. that was it. And I think
that's at that moment was hitting you.
Yeah, and in that moment, it was really starting to hit me. Just feeling myself not being able to move without pain. You know, as much as I said, you know, I'm standing up, sitting down because physiotherapists were there to help me, you know, get back to how it feels to move again. It was like learning to walk as an adult. You know. It's a good thing we learned this stuff as babies, because it felt like, you know, there was just sandbags just holding down every joint in my body, and I just it was just an effort to do anything, move, drink, you know. I felt blinking was
at any point did you feel yourself saying, okay, I need to tap into my faith and God to help me through this process?
Yes, and it happened the day I left intensive care. I don't know what came over me that day. You know, you would think moving out of intensive care into a private ward, you'd feel like, okay, progress. But, you know, in the midst of moving, you know, certain tubes still tied to me, it really just, the situation fully hit me like a train. And the tears, I couldn't hold them back before the nurses were finished dealing with me. And I just felt myself, it just all hit me at once, Mike. And I broke down completely. I was just like, why? Like, why me? Why now? Why this?
Yeah.
I had no answers. I felt so lost. I felt like I was crying out in tongues, you know, that night. You know, a therapist that I've been talking to came to visit me and everything, you know. And I know what he was saying, you know, the worst part of it is over, and I knew this, but I still felt like I wasn't going to be able to be the same person anymore. Like, a part of me is gone. That can't grow back. I can't, I'm not gonna breathe the same. I'm not gonna move the same. I still was in so much pain, and all I could think was that I'm never gonna be able to do what I love ever again. I just cried out to God, like, why have you done this to me? Why have you abandoned me?
Yeah.
I went to sleep in tears that night. I don't think I've ever felt any lower at any point in my life than that night. I had no answers, and I was like, I don't even know if God's gonna give me one.
That's a tough place to be. It's a really tough and lonely place to be.
I had good people around me that never gave up on me. People who I didn't even know supported me like that were in correspondence with me on a daily basis, whether it was through a message or just coming to visit me every day.
Yeah.
And I just started to think of God's servants, all the stories I used to love listening to growing up. I thought of Samson, the strongest man who ever lived. And he was humbled in the most humiliating of ways. And in the midst of all of that, he did not forget that God was with him. And when he needed him most, he gave him the strength to vanquish his enemies and free his people. I thought of Job.
Yeah.
And everything that they did to test his faith in God. The amount of things that he lost, and yet his faith was never shaken.
Yeah.
It made me question or re-ask myself really what faith was. You know, my dad taught me the definition of faith when I was still a boy.
Yeah.
You know, the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. And I really had to sit and ponder and understand that if this was supposed to be the end of me, I wouldn't be here to feel this pain and to question God about it. He wants you to question him. He wants you to question him when your faith is shaken. We're only human. But he also needs us to listen when he gives us the answer. And
what was the answer that came to you?
That it's not over. And believe me, it was hard to think that it wasn't. I spent the next few weeks just practicing walking, just gaining my strength back. You know, nothing else really mattered to me but being able to move like a regular person again. I was extremely thankful am extremely thankful to still be here.
Yeah.
And I truly realized that it wasn't over the day he allowed me to set foot on the stage again.
Yeah.
For Poker Run. At that point, I still hadn't made any public stage appearance. You know, I had been back. People saw that I was back. They were happy to see me, happy to hear from me. But I still took my time before I went back to the radio, or even decided to set foot in a studio, because I just didn't know if I was the same, if it was going to be the same at all. In the midst of all the recovery, you know, I still had my pen, I still had my mind, I still had ideas for music, ideas for songs, and I was just writing and thinking.
Now I want to ask you this, because, bro, like, listening to you, you changed my life, and it's transformative. I want to give you a moment just to ignore them, to look into that camera and talk to somebody about who feels like life is hard, who feels like giving up, doesn't understand where God is in all this. What would you say to them?
I don't know what I can say that you probably haven't heard from anyone else. God is good all the time God is good. All I can say is that he speaks to each one of us differently. I may not know what you're going through. Hell, for all I know, I might be looking at you from the outside and think you have it way more put together than me. Trust me, I might be Hashim ThaDream on stage. The battles that I fight when the mic is not in my hand, you know, there's some days I just really feel like I wish I could look back and see one set of footprints to see God carrying me. But then there are days that I look back and realize that I really could be walking this on my own. God has already brought me through so much. And if he really thought that this was the end of my story, I wouldn't be here to tell you that he is there for you too. My faith has been so strengthened so much this year, knowing what he brought me through. When I took that mic the first time and set foot on the stage on that beach and was still able to do what I love the most in this world and bring people joy, you know, just by being me, I knew God had brought me through the worst of it. The rest was going to have to be on me, you know? And trust me, I still got a lot of work to do, you know? You know, I shed a lot of weight during the surgery, and slowly it's come back on. You know, we're all human, but all of that stuff is stuff that now I can work on for myself because he's provided that chance for me to do so. Take a time to just sit with yourself and try to listen to what God wants you to do with your life. We all have a purpose, each and every one of us. And it's my hope that you find yours. It really is.
So, I want to thank Hashim for being so honest and transparent and encouraging in this moment. The Transformation Series is to be able to tell life stories, some good, some bad, some in between, for the courage of what it means to when you hit that wall and you go through the whole process and then that moment stops where you just feel helpless. I mean, he quoted so many stories, but when he talked about Samson being humbled down and being strong and having that one moment to be there, it's amazing. You never know where faith lies. What's going to be your transformative moment to allow you to believe, to allow you to trust, to allow you to understand that God has a purpose for your life? Well, if this story has inspired you, we have people standing by to talk with you. So call us, connect with us. These numbers that you see here are live people who just want you to be better. If you want a community of people who believe and trust and listen and worship and don't judge, you could worship and gather with us every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. here at the King Garden Baptist Church, or join us online wherever you are. Most importantly, let this year be your year that you shift your mind, your body, and your soul to be the best version that God has called you to be. Hashim said it, but more so the Bible said it. God has a purpose for your life beyond your predicaments or your problems. Let your problems and predicaments be transformative moments. On behalf of my good brother, Hashim, and all the people that made this happen, continue to be amazing, continue to be transformative, and live on purpose.